guys, welcome back. I'm Ashlyn.
I'm Elle.
And we are Lovey Cosplay.
And this is Shit Cosplayers Say, Comic-Con Edition!
So we just had our first trip to a Comic-Con. We went to the Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo, better known as C2E2, at McCormick Place in Chicago, and we had an amazing time!
It was kind of crazy being at a convention as big as C2E2. Now, I was listening to some other podcasts that also went to C2E2, and they were talking about how small of a convention this is. But since we attend anime conventions primarily, we thought this thing was huge.
Oh yeah, we go to anime conventions, a lot of like library cons or comic and toy shows, which are much smaller in the grand scheme of things compared to like San Diego, which I think was their point of reference.
Yes, because we're probably talking about the same wonderful podcast that we listened to, and we'll get to some of the podcasters that we met on our adventures at C2E2 later in this episode.
Probably sooner rather than later if we're going to go in chronological order, but we'll get to that in a second. So yeah, what were your first impressions other than the fact that it was huge?
I was actually surprised by how much I enjoyed it and didn't feel like being in cosplay was the number one thing, which was really weird because normally we just go to conventions to be in cosplay, but I think I actually could have gone to C2E2 and not worn a costume and been perfectly fine.
I would agree with that assessment, yes. And it was kind of odd because it's not the normal for us.
It's a really weird feeling, and it was because there was such a wide variety of other things to do that I didn't feel like the main attraction, for me anyway, to C2E2 was being able to wear cosplay at an event.
McCormick Place isn't really set up as a really good spot for photo shoots and that kind of like cosplay hangout culture that we're kind of used to from the anime and like littler shows. I think that was part of the reason why I felt that way in general. But yeah, I could have gone without a costume and been okay.
Now, we still did get a couple really great photo shoots in while we were there, including shooting with the amazing portrait dude. If you have not shot with Wes, you need to change that because he is amazing.
Absolutely.
And we also got to work our friend Tana from PTP Cosplay Photography. So thank you, Tana, for taking time out of your day to come work with us. It was a good time.
Even if you regretted it later.
So our friend made the mistake of booking way too many photo shoots, as he usually does. So by the time he got to us, he was very, very tired.
He also made the mistake of telling us of a game that he plays with his photographer friends where they take pictures of each other and then post them in their group chat. So for the rest of the weekend, I proceeded to take photos of him every time I saw him and then posted them on social media.
That was his own fault.
Yes, this is 100% on you.
He should know better.
You should have known better.
Tana, you should definitely know better than to tell us something like that.
Yep. Tag, you're it.
No, he's going to do it to us.
He'd probably do it to us anyway, so who cares? As a cosplayer with a social media handle, did you just complain about somebody taking your photo and then tagging you?
Shh. This is fine. This is fine.
That's what I thought. So the one thing I will say about McCormick Place and C2E2 in general, LineCon wasn't quite expecting it. Normally, we don't have to wait anywhere, and the lines were huge. We talked about it a little bit, and we've kind of decided that we are spoiled princesses when it comes to going to events, because typically if we're not competing, we are either guesting or speaking or judging or some other volunteer staffing capacity like running a contest. And so we don't actually have to wait to go anywhere that we want to go. We just walk in, no questions asked. And here, we didn't have that luxury. We had to go and wait in security. And then wait to get into places. And then wait to use the elevators. And it was odd.
Although there was waiting, this is probably the most efficient convention I've ever been to.
Yes, 100%. ReedPop gets a gold star.
Oh, yeah. I will for sure take a second look at any convention now that is run by ReedPop because legit, everything was on time. Everything was run smoothly. Their staff knew what they were doing. I've never seen this before.
Yes, everything was efficient. Everything we went to was prompt. And like Elle said, if we had a question or a concern, if that person in particular didn't know, they knew exactly who to direct us to or went and got the answer themselves. And I was super impressed because usually everything's run by just volunteers that are trained the day of. And they're like, well, I don't know, it's somebody else's job to worry about that. Definitely appreciated that. So great job, Reed Pop. Your staff is amazing.
I mean, we probably should have known when they sent us an entire manual on being speakers that they were probably going to be more organized than what we're used to.
Yes, I mean, that's valid.
An entire manual.
So we went Friday, and we went down and we got our badges. Pretty painless experience overall. When we got there, we looked at the line and we were like, oh my goodness. Because you had to wait in line to go through security. They've got metal detectors, they've got security people. It kind of reminded me of like when I go to concerts. You have to open up all your pockets and you have to take stuff out of your bag and you have to walk through the metal detector. And if you set it off, then they have to go over you with the wand. And then once you got past there, then it split off into more lines. So they had a line for people that needed to buy badges at the convention, a line for people that had purchased badges but needed to pick them up at the convention. And then they had an entirely different section for all the people with special badges, which we fell into, like speakers, exhibitors, guests, press. Those all kind of had their own section. So it was a lot of hurry up and wait, but it was actually a very, very efficient experience. And I definitely was impressed by the end of it.
Well, I guess the other thing that we did not account for was the distance between the hotel and the convention center. You kind of had to add about 20 to 30 minutes to anywhere you wanted to be to get from not only the Marriott to the convention center, but then through the check-in and then through the mob of people into the actual con floor.
Yes, because you have to either come from the Marriott or the Hyatt, or if you were even further away, then bless you for making that trek. You had to have the travel time to the McCormick Place itself. Then you had to go through security. And then once you get through security, you have to go through the mob of people that are in the main gallery of the south building of McCormick Place, which is where they have the big C2E2 letter signs. And then from there, you have to cross the mob into either the main con floor or up the escalators towards where the events and panel programming are.
But then you get into the massive con floor, which I'm pretty sure we only saw about half of, because this place was humongous. Like, I don't think I've ever seen so many vendors in one space before.
Like, the size of the vendor floor was bigger than a lot of entire convention spaces that we're used to.
They had their own beer garden in the middle of the con floor.
I feel like all cons should have a beer garden.
We didn't even have time to go to the beer garden, but maybe next year.
It was on my list of things to do, but we just ran out of time.
They legit had, like, fake grass and made a beer garden in the middle of the con floor.
Complete with AstroTurf. It was good. And a pretzel stand, which made it even better.
Yeah, that was the other weird thing about McCormick Place, is they could have cared less if you brought food and drink into their convention center, which I've never actually seen before.
Well, it's probably because there are so many places that lease from them that sell food. They don't want to be like, no, you can't bring that in here, because they've got people at their little concession stands on the con floor. They had the food court a couple floors down, and then that main hallway that's in the... I have to remember which building. The building that's between the Hyatt and the South building, there was this hallway that had like 3 or 4 restaurants there too. I believe every building out of like the 4 or 5 that they have actually has food in it. So they probably don't want you to buy something somewhere, try to go to a different section of the same convention center and be like, well, no, you can't take that in. We're like, I just bought this like 2 seconds ago from the people that pay you stupid money to be here.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, because this was also probably one of the conventions with the most available food options I've seen, too. Not necessarily affordable, but available.
And as an adult, I will totally say that I pay sometimes more than I should for convenience.
But there is also a Subway like a block away from the Marriott, which helped a lot.
And a grocery store like 2 blocks away, so that was nice too.
Yeah, there's like this little cute bodega grocery store deal just down the street, which had a bunch of different things. So once we actually found time to leave to go over there, we were able to stock up a little bit.
Yeah, that was really nice that we were able to take advantage of some of the local amenities.
Well, that's because we stayed at a Marriott, and they conveniently looked at my preferences, and we got a refrigerator.
But soon we won't have that problem. But we'll get to that later too. So yeah, Friday, we went and said hi to our friends, and then we went to the Chicago Podcasters meetup, which was a totally cool experience. So if you happen to have a podcast and you happen to either be in the Chicago area or frequent the Chicago area like we do for conventions or other events, they've got 2 different groups on Facebook, Chicago Podcasters, and I believe Chicago Podcasters United is the other one.
I think so.
So yeah, go definitely check those out. Lots and lots of good people there. So thank you so much for hosting.
Yeah, we got to meet quite a few enjoyable people. I mean, we could spend an entire episode just mentioning all the people that we got to meet at this meetup.
Definitely. And we didn't even get to meet everybody, which was the tragedy, because we were there for over an hour, including the time that we had when we kind of kept the meetup going in the hallway. And we still didn't get to say hi and exchange information with everybody, which is super sad. So I hope that all those people either jump on the Facebook event or on those Facebook groups so that I can subscribe to them and check out their content.
Well, I was able to check out a couple of these already. Obviously, there were a lot of podcasts, so we haven't listened to all of them yet. Because, well, it's only been about a week. Oh, wow. We're recording in real time.
Weird.
What is that?
I don't know.
Instead of recording like 3 weeks ahead, it's only like a week ahead. We never do that.
There you go, giving away all of our trade secrets again.
They already knew our trade secrets.
Shh.
This is fine. So we did want to mention a couple of the podcasts that we did get to talk to. One of them being Fan Dummies, which is kind of a fandom-based discussion podcast. They're pretty hilarious. It's a team of 3 that just kind of discuss different movies, different experiences. They were a lot of fun at the meetup, and I'm kind of hoping that maybe they would love to hang out with us on the podcast sometime and discuss what their impressions are when they see cosplayers, because according to their podcast, they don't really know what to do when they see a cosplayer.
I think the hanging out with them would be a good time.
I think we should make them cosplay next time they're at an event that we are also at.
That would be fun.
And then they can talk about their experiences of getting to cosplay. Because I feel like you can't truly understand cosplay until you try it yourself.
Yeah, no, this is a good plan. So we'll have to come up with something for them.
Absolutely. So if you want to listen to Fan Dummies, you can find them on pretty much any of your podcast apps. Their social media is Fan Dummies. So go check them out and get a feel for their sense of humor. They're quite entertaining. Well, and then they also had podcasts that like you wouldn't have expected to be at something like a Comic-Con. There was actually a paranormal podcast at Comic-Con, which I did not expect.
Yeah, and I have one of their fancy buttons with me right now in my craft room. So it's called the Ghostly Podcast, and they try to debunk ghost stories, is my understanding.
One of the hosts believes in the paranormal and the other does not, and so they actually discuss the likelihood of certain situations. A lot of the times it's centering around things in Chicago. I actually listened to the first episode, and it's quite interesting, the different angles that they take to try to explain or deny certain situations of famous ghost stories.
And that sounds just really, really cool, especially when you add the local flair to that, where it's going to be especially if you're a listener from the Chicago area, something that maybe you'd grown up hearing or you've heard about peripherally from one of your friends or family members before, and then having somebody come in and kind of analyze it. That's really, really neat.
You know, keeping with Chicago, there was also Off the Beaten podcast, which is a gentleman who goes around Chicago and interviews different people and kind of has them tell their story, which I haven't had the chance to listen to it yet, but the concept is super interesting.
He just will walk up to somebody on the street, and if he thinks he sees a particular moment or sees something that he thinks is particularly interesting, he'll go ahead and just come up and talk to you about it. And I believe it started actually as a blog, and then he was moving into the podcast media.
And you can find Off the Beaten podcast on pretty much any podcast app, and they are also on Instagram under Off the Beaten podcast. Because I actually ran to Instagram while we were sitting in the hotel on Saturday night and tried to find everybody. The one I'm really curious to listen to is Pearl Fire RPG. And it's another kind of like a role-play game type story, but they're paying really close attention to making sure that the mechanics that they're using and the storytelling that they're using is going to translate really easily to anyone, regardless of whether or not you know anything about tabletop gaming.
So they actually have their own version of the rules, which are supposed to be easy enough for just anybody to follow along with, whether you've listened to one episode or all of their episodes, whether you've played all sorts of tabletop and role-playing games or none at all. They're really trying to open it up and open up that genre of podcast to be enjoyable for everybody, especially people who might not be familiar with the mechanics but really love the storytelling aspect.
Well, and I really think that's great because some of the things that I find difficult about listening to shows like Critical Role, for instance, which the voice acting is amazing, but I don't always understand what's going on because I don't really have a background in tabletop gaming or Dungeons and Dragons. And no, we did not get to see the Critical Role show because we were not waiting in line for 3 hours.
Like I said, we're spoiled princesses and we don't like to wait for things.
It was a very long line, and at least half the people did not get in the room.
Well, and the other thing that we've talked about possibly trying to get into next year is Chuckload of Comics actually has a vendor booth on the main floor set up as Podcast Central, where you can actually record a show from the booth on the con floor, which just sounds like a super fun experience all around.
We definitely weren't comfortable with doing that now, but I think a year from now, that would totally be something that I would apply for.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We had a chance to stop by and kind of check it out when there were some other people recording, and the whole setup looked really interesting. And there, of course, there was a group of people standing around kind of enjoying what was going on, listening to the show as it was being recorded. Kudos to you. That's really awesome that Chuckload's able to set that up for people and kind of throw that media out there for people maybe who aren't really sure what a podcast is and haven't really had a chance to get into it. They're going to be walking by on the con floor and being like, hey, what's this? Oh, well, maybe this is something that I need to check out. It's not something I've ever actually looked into before. Maybe this is something I'd find really enjoyable. And it just opens their horizons to like a whole new world that's out there.
Do you believe that the Chumpcast also helped them with getting that set up? Which I have not listened to their podcast yet, but judging from their Instagram, it must be extremely entertaining. Because these guys are silly. All I know is that it's like comic book based, but if you go look at the photos of their Instagram, they're hysterical.
Good.
So I need to go listen to them at some point.
I know, my app's going to be overloaded with episodes.
I have too many podcasts right now anyway, so it's just going to take a while. But I also know that the Chicago community is going to be doing some podcast festivals, so we may at some point in time apply for one of those as well.
That could be a good time.
Talk to us in particular about a women's only podcast festival. So that would probably be one of them that we would look into. being, ladies and all. Unlike the rest of the podcasters, we actually had a live show to do at C2E2.
Yes, so if you're really lucky, maybe at some point we will bless you with the audio that was Shit Cosplayers Say on Friday night. For those of you that missed us.
That is if the camera actually recorded it. Properly.
Properly is a key word. Maybe we'll give it to you as bonus feature if it's crap, but if it's salvageable, maybe we'll gift it to you one of these days. For those of you who haven't had the chance to come visit us in person, because it is a bit of a different experience than the podcast, but it's still a really good time.
It's extra chaos.
Thankfully for Elle, the room was not set up for 284 theater style.
Yay!
They did have it set up in a classroom format with banquet tables instead, which according to McCormick Place's website, knocks it down to 142. Which I would say is probably a little bit more accurate as far as just kind of eyeballing it and guessing how many seats there were. That's closer, I think, to the number that we really kind of assumed.
Well, and that's much less scary than 284.
But we did find ourselves on a couple different signs. So we were on official C2E2 Read Pop super fancy signage, both for our particular room, S503, and on all of the C2E2 After Dark signage. So that was exciting. We went upstairs and one of the staff members took a photo of us in front of our sign so we could be like, oh my God, and we geeked out about it. So it was good.
Speaking of that staff member, she was like, which one are you guys? And we're like, oh, we're Shit Cosplayers Say. And she's like, oh my God, people keep walking by and going, Shit Cosplayers Say, what is that? I gotta see that. And she's like, I've been wondering the same thing. Everyone wants to know what this is.
Yeah, that's okay. Sometimes we wonder too.
Well, I mean, like we've said before, we're pretty sure that's how we get shows to take us in general, because they just want to know how there's a panel called Shit Cosplayers Say.
I definitely enjoyed the After Dark experience, even though it was pretty early. Would do again, 10 out of 10.
We were worried before about being up against all these guest panels that were happening at the same time, because we're like, nobody's gonna come because we're up against all these guest panels. And so there's a guest panel next door to us, and there's ours, and there's this big line forming, and we're assuming this big line is for the panel next to us that starts like 15 minutes before, because why would it be for ours? And then Ashlyn comes back, and she's like, the line goes all the way around the corner and to the escalator, and it's for our show.
Yep, it's true. It was.
And we were like,
talk about being pumped.
Right? We're like, oh shit. Here we're sitting here going, nobody's going to come. And then we have a massive line waiting outside of the room.
Yeah, it was great. And we had a really, really good audience. Everybody was awesome, super interactive. Blows my mind every time that we run this panel because you guys are great. You guys are awesome. This would not be nearly as much fun without you. I'm just saying.
No, the audience is what makes doing the live show version worth it, because we don't really know exactly what's going to happen during it, and the audience reaction just makes it the best. Although this is the first audience we've had that was afraid of the category Drop It Like It's Hot.
I know, I was so surprised. Like, they even got a preview because we were having some technical problems with the audio and with the PowerPoint, or it's not a PowerPoint, with the slideshow that we were running. And they got to see on accident a couple of the questions before they actually came up, and nobody wanted to pick the category at all. I'm like, why? This is usually popular.
Drop It Like It's Hot deals with most of the subject matter that makes the panel 18 plus. They were not so keen on going anywhere into that category, which it's funny because at the anime conventions, that's their favorite freaking category. But we're also dealing with a different kind of crowd and a different age group, because I do think this age group was older.
For the most part.
So next time we come to C2E2, we might actually get rid of Drop It Like It's Hot, which in that case, it wouldn't necessarily be an 18 plus.
Right.
It might be a 16.
I would almost consider keeping it. Maybe. I'd almost consider keeping it, though, because I like our spot in After Dark.
But you don't necessarily need to be an 18 plus to be an After Dark.
It's true.
because most of them were not.
I think there were two of my favorite things that came out of this panel, though. We got more things for our writer.
We did.
For our contract with Anime Iowa. And our refrigerator has a name.
The fridge has been named.
Yes. Their name is Phil. Phil the Fridge.
Yes. We will definitely get our refrigerator a name tag that says my name is Phil.
Yes, Phil the Fridge. So somebody shouted out in the audience and I almost died because I was like, you are my favorite person ever.
They got marshmallows.
It's a great name and it's a pun. And they did. They got marshmallows. See what you're missing out on by not showing up? You missed out on the marshmallows.
Yeah, our audience got marshmallows this time. Because why not? We also had dares this time, which we've never done either.
We did. It was a good time. That we need more of those. I'm sad that we only got to do one of our dares. We had 2 set for us and 2 set for the audience members. This poor girl got a dare where she had to do something during the next Q&A. Well, then the next question gets picked and it's another dare. So not only does she have to do the thing during the next Q&A, but also the duration of the next dare. And she kept contributing to the conversation. So she was really prolonging her own misery at that point by having to continue to do the thing.
She was a great sport. If we could have given her more prizes, we probably would have.
Definitely a gold star. Our people that played with us, they got prizes.
We also now need to put together an everything cake that is big enough for us to jump out of.
We've dubbed an everything cake a cake with every flavor because we couldn't pick one.
I have already told Loraiwe that we need this, and she was like, a what? And I was like, we need an everything cake for Anime Iowa. And she's like, I don't even understand. I don't want to know.
Yes, you do. And we need to pop out of it.
I have started writing the writer down. So
yes,
continue to send us things. We did get one submission that really entertained me.
Yep.
You can't get it anymore. But I want it anyway. And I told her it's going in the writer. And she's like, that doesn't exist anymore. And I'm like, I don't care.
Don't care. Too bad. Find it.
So we're going to put Crystal Pepsi on our writer.
But yeah, so that was Friday. We dressed up and did a photo shoot on Friday before the panel. We dressed up on Saturday and ended up doing a few photo shoots. The one aforementioned with the portrait dude. And we also did one with Tana from PTP. And then we just kind of relaxed the rest of the day. We were just kind of chilling. Special thanks to all the friends of competitors that went to the Crown Championships of Cosplay because we got to live stream it from our hotel room on the internet because people were doing live videos on Instagram since, for whatever reason, C2E2 was unable to stream it live this year. So we got to still watch and kind of hang out and cheer for our peeps.
But we also forgot to mention that both Ashlyn and I were super sick right before C2E2.
Oh, yes.
So we're
super sick.
We're still recovering from being sick. So, I mean, on Saturday night, I'm still debating whether or not I'm even doing this contest that we mentioned previously. Because I'm like, I do not know if I'm well enough to stay till 4 p.m. to go on stage.
Well, and everybody that I had told after we got there what had happened with me the week prior was like, why are you here? You should not be here. Why are you here? You should be at home. And I'm like, well, you know.
I think things might have been different if we didn't have a live show on Friday.
Maybe, but...
No, we probably still would have gone.
We probably still would have gone, let's be honest. Because we're gluttons for punishment.
Well, and the very expensive hotel wasn't refundable more than, like, after 48 hours before your booking. So...
Well, and I would have just been super disappointed, and I'm sure everybody else would have been too, if we would have had to have canceled our live show, because that would have been tragic. And then RuPaul probably would have never wanted us back ever again. Which would also be tragic, because I loved doing this show. Super shout out to our teammate for the International Cosplay League. Turn of events, Ganoza actually cannot go anymore to Spain with us, and actually ended up judging this contest along with a few other people. Awesome for you. However, our runner-up, C80 Thingamabobs, entered the contest and actually took second place in needlework. So we are so excited for you. Yes! Congratulations. You totally deserve it, and it's beautiful, and I love it.
And now she gets to go with us to Spain.
I know. We're going to have such a good time. Super congrats to you.
Speaking of contests, you guys are probably curious about what happened with the sudden mystery presentation performance contest that happened on Sunday of C2E2.
And thank you to everybody that kept tagging us in this because you knew that we would be interested in it, because you are absolutely correct.
We got so many tags. I'm like, yes, I see it. I see it. Yes, I do. I see the thing.
I know. They just kept coming. We were talking on the phone about it the night that they posted it, and it just kept showing up, and people just kept tagging us and sending it in private messages. We're like, we know. We know.
See the thing. So yes, I did end up staying on Sunday to do the contest, and it was totally worth doing. Was a wonderful experience. And we'll kind of go through a little bit, at least of what I can tell you about it. Keep in mind that this is a first-year contest, and so they're still getting a lot of things figured out. So when we went into this contest, we thought it was a performance contest. That wasn't quite right. Like, it wasn't a craftsmanship contest. It wasn't a performance contest. I would describe it more as a costume presentation contest. So it was really based on how well your costume presented to the judges.
I would agree with the assessment, yes.
So, like, it wasn't about your acting and things like that. It was about how you presented. We didn't really get craftsmanship judged. It was more of like a 30 to 60 second interview that you had with the judges. So they weren't flipping seams. They weren't examining construction in detail like you normally would for like an anime con type of masquerade that we're used to.
Well, and I think a lot of that had to do with the time constraints for the time that they were actually allotted for judging.
Well, and as I say this, keep in mind that there's a very good chance all of this will change for next year. So what they kind of did this year may not be remotely what they do next year. So please read the rules. Read the rules for next year. They did have us sign up on Sunday morning, which actually went pretty well. Kudos to their coordinator, Jen. She is incredible. I sent her a thank you email. I don't know if she's going to get it or not because I sent it to the C2E2 panelist email that I have. So if anybody knows her, let me know because I really wanted to thank her for the awesome work that she did and keeping things organized and keeping the contestants, feeling good, keeping things on time. We've both stage managed, run contests, and it's a really hard job.
It's a thankless job.
Well, and it is. People don't normally notice the amount of work that the crew is putting into a show. And this crew was phenomenal. 10 out of 10.
100%.
And the contestants that we met were amazing at this show.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they had such a good time. And it was a really different atmosphere than what we're used to because nobody was like side-eyeing each other. Nobody was being like, oh, they look good, they're gonna win. Like everybody was just chatting and having a good time and everyone was just there to have fun. And that was a really different feel from a lot of the anime convention-based competitions that we've done.
And I think that part of that too is because it was a presentation contest more so than a craftsmanship contest. You didn't have that predisposition to kind of go look around the room being like, what's the competition like? Like I think a lot of people do in anime crowds. And all these people were just here to get on stage and have a good time and kind of, show their little piece of their fandom to the world. and they all got to do that. And so it was really nice. I was just there as a handler, but to be there in the room and seeing everybody interact with each other, people got up, and whenever it wasn't their turn to be judged or talk to an organizer, they were getting up and getting out of their queue to go talk to some other people. After the contest, everybody was hunting each other down to, kind of give their 2 cents in, exchange social media handles so that they can keep in contact with one another or follow one another on Facebook or Instagram, Twitter, etc. That whole community vibe that we got from that experience with those people was just great and really, really refreshing.
We did get to meet a couple pretty awesome people during this show, including the Best in Show, which was done by Bridget J. Cosplay, and what was her partner's handle?
I believe it's VixVex.
I believe that's it. They did a Rococo, Harley, and Joker, and it was stunning.
Stunning.
And they were also precious on stage. She and I kept making jokes that we matched. Because we had the exact same color scheme and really similar silk and everything for our outfits. So we legit matched.
Yeah.
We also got to meet Emily Grace, which I believe her Instagram handle is EG Drama Queen. She is legit a living Disney princess.
Super, super sweet.
She's also a professional princess performer.
I don't know if she still is, but I know she definitely was.
Yeah. And she came to the contest as Belle, and she was just a joy to talk to.
Oh, absolutely.
And her dress was stunning.
Well, yeah.
Because we can't help but look at craftsmanship when we're talking to people at a contest.
I know. I was over talking to Badoni Cosplay, who was one of the other handlers that was at the event, and I was just like, the judge in me just wants to go up and touch everything and talk to people, and she's like, down, down.
I had the same issue with Paisley and Glue after the show because I just wanted to fawn all over her Doctor Strange costume, and I literally looked at her and went, the judge in me right now is trying not to look at every little detail on this costume while you're trying to talk to me.
Yes. Yeah.
I would say, though, that the contestant, at least, that made my night was Tomcat, and
Please.
Tom and I need to combine powers because he's a joy.
Please.
Tom was also in Crown the night before. He was the Evo Queen from Snow White. So he competes in Crown the night before and then proceeds to compete in this contest as the fan art Sailor Dorothy, as in Dorothy from the Golden Girls.
Yes.
And then acted out a recorded song.
Which he did himself.
And I was super charmed, and now we'll forever be charmed with Tom, and we all need to be on stage together.
Well, and let's be honest, both you and I are that extra that if we had been in Crown the night before, we also would have still competed in the masquerade the next day, as long as it wasn't against the rules.
Maybe we probably would have.
Don't say maybe. Don't lie to yourself, and definitely don't lie to me.
I'm just gonna lie to myself and say that I wouldn't, but I probably would.
Yeah,
let's
because
be
we
honest.
both know that's a lie.
I mean,
let's be honest here. 100%.
That probably...
Performers first. We've talked about this. Performers first.
One of the interesting thing about this is there were only a handful of us that did what we're used to seeing as skits.
Yes.
Which was kind of fun because it was actually a really big variety.
Yeah, one of my favorites was actually the Kylo Ren. It's a circus performer, so he had this really cool ring act that he did up on stage, which this is one of the few stages I've seen that's actually big enough to do that kind of act on, so it was just a pleasure to watch.
They had the entire cast of Rocky Horror do the time warp.
Yes. I mean, as you do.
As you do.
What else are you going to do with the entire cast of Rocky Horror?
I guess I should probably tell people what I did.
Oh, yeah.
I guess.
They probably want to know.
So as you remember, I was limited to 90 seconds because I was a solo. I ended up doing a parody of the song Roxy from Chicago as Harley, sung in the accent from Batman the Animated Series.
Yep.
My understanding is there is video evidence of this somewhere.
Good.
that will eventually get released by ReadPop.
I followed the channel where supposedly it's going to be, so if we get that link, we'll be sure to share it with you.
Well, in my understanding, it was really entertaining, but I'm one of those performers that basically blacks out while I'm on stage, so I have no freaking clue how it went.
It was fun.
I do know I didn't have a lot of time to practice because I was so sick. I feel like it probably wasn't my best, but I also have imposter syndrome, so...
Well, and I know you had such a struggle shaving your file down to 90 seconds because originally when you wrote it, it was supposed to be more of like a 2.5 minute skit and not a 90-second skit.
Well, and I do think that was probably my biggest hang up was I was still remembering my choreography from when it was longer. And then I only had about 2 weeks to shave it down. You know, your audio never sounds the same in the masquerade room as it does in your house. And the one thing that ReadPop hadn't figured out this year, which hopefully they do next year, is that if you have recorded performances, you cannot start the audio before the actors are on stage, which they unfortunately did for every person. So I didn't get that like couple seconds of getting settled. I had to literally run to hit my mark before my music started because I knew they were going to start my music before I was in place. Which is just something that's a learning curve. I mean, they've never had performances, so they don't know that, unlike a walk-on, you can't start it before they enter, especially with a 90-second time limit.
Right. And that's just feedback that they can get from the contestants for next year to make the show better next year, because that's how constructive criticism works.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure they can adjust. I mean, they're more than able to make that small adjustment. Because really, if that's the only thing that didn't go right in a first-year contest at 4 p.m. at a Comic-Con that's allowing performances, I mean, kudos to you, ReadPop.
Yeah, kudos to you. 4 p.m. Sunday, like, gold star. I was very, very impressed with how smooth everything went, especially for a first-year contest.
But we haven't talked about my favorite part yet. That had nothing to do with the actual contest.
You also didn't tell them what actually happened at the contest.
Oh, I didn't. I was actually more obsessed with this other thing that happened than winning.
Elle walked away with best individual, and that's not the highlight of the day. So, you know.
Yeah, I did. Which I think part of the problem with the award is I'm still getting used to the fact that I won something on my own. Like, I made that costume myself, and I did that performance by myself, and I won something.
You did.
And, like, no, my craftsmanship wasn't really judged, so the plus point to that is I should be able to compete at Anime Central still. But, like a good cosplayer, I have emailed John, the coordinator of Anime Central, and I am waiting to make sure that he is okay with the fact that I get my craftsmanship judged at Anime Central, because I did win an award at a 90,000 person convention. Because that's what you do.
You mean you communicated and you talked to the coordinator and you asked your question to the person that actually knows instead of posting about it on Facebook vaguely?
I did, because even though ASIN has absolutely no rules regarding recompeting anything, and technically, I didn't get judged for craftsmanship, and we're doing another performance, and I'm competing as a duo, I still felt it was respectful to the convention that I make sure it's okay.
Gold star.
Gold star. But yes, my favorite part about this convention and being at this competition was the small child.
Small child. There was this super cute Harley Quinn cosplayer that was tiny. And she had a giant inflatable mallet that was as big as she was. And it was the most precious thing.
This child had to be about 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah. Well, and Mom and Dad were also cosplaying. Mom was Pamela Isley, Poison Ivy, and Dad was Ra's al Ghul. So we had this whole Bat villain family thing going on, and it was the cutest thing.
I'm on stage because they had all of us who had won something stay on stage to get pictures and stuff. And I just see this small child Harley Quinn cosplayer standing at the foot of the stage, staring up at me with these big eyes and this big smile. And I am a sucker for children, guys. Like, I could be exhausted and on my deathbed, and there is a child, and I will turn on the acting. If there is a child, I jump off the stage and go straight to this kid and start talking in the Batman the Animated Series accent, even though my throat is so sore from how dry it was in this convention. I'm like, nope, I gotta turn this on. The kid's here. This kid is totally eating it all up the entire time.
It was super cute.
She wanted to know if I could come over to her house and play.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that she would have gone home with you if you would have let her.
Mom said she would go home with me if I let her, because I'm pretty sure she followed me around for about half an hour.
Yes, that's accurate. They actually had to pretty much peel her away from you and get. I think they took the opportunity when someone took your photo to kind of like usher her down the stairs to put physical distance.
She would have probably left with us. We eventually decided that she was just going to have to take a family vacation to Gotham City with her parents so she can visit, but that we'd have to look out for Batman because he's out to get us.
That seems legit, yes.
She was so darn cute. Like, she's following me down the hallway and mimicking how I'm walking, so we're marching down the hallway at one point, and I'm talking to her in the accent, and Mom's dying. Like, I'm pretty sure Mom took video. I have Mom on Instagram now, so I'll have to ask her.
Yeah, it was really great. It was definitely a great way to end the weekend. It was with this like wholesome experience.
Like, that alone made it worth staying till 6 p.m. on Sunday in Chicago. Just to see that kid's face. Because, oh my goodness. Because that's definitely the performer in me. I am a total sucker for children. I completely understand why everyone wants to cosplay Disney things, because you get those reactions from the kids. And I don't typically have costumes that get those reactions, although we got probably as equally precious reactions from all the parents when we wore Ladybug and Chat Noir on Friday.
It's the parents, which I don't blame them. I'm a huge Miracular too. I totally understand. But yeah. Oh my God, my kids totally love this show. I'm going to be the coolest parent. Can I take a picture with you?
There was a lot of that. And there were a lot of small children just kind of like staring slack-jawed when we would walk by and wave at them. It was cute. We're going to have to do a whole episode on wholesome content regarding kids and cosplay.
Aw.
Because we have a lot of great stories, and I'm sure all of you do too.
Yeah, I think the highlight of my Friday was we actually did a video for one of our friends. Her daughter actually was sick and had to go to the hospital. So we did a video while we were still in Chat and Ladybug and sent it to her. And she said that's the first time that she had smiled all day. And I'm just like, I felt so bad because she's obviously not feeling really good, but it kind of just warms your heart and makes you feel all the warm and fuzzies because, you know, you did that. You put that smile on their face. And
we apparently also made the Portrait Dudes kids weekend as well by sending them a photo of Dad with Ladybug and Chat Noir. If you have wholesome content stories that you would like to send to us, please send them to podcastscs@gmail.com.
Please do. I love the wholesome content, and it just gives me the feel goods, and everybody needs the feel goods every once in a while, especially in today's day and age.
So you're probably wondering, after all this crazy, are we going to try to do this again next year?
Heck yes.
Oh yeah. C2E2 is probably going to be a regular thing now.
Please take my money, because that was just such an amazing experience, like, overall. 100% would do again.
It's also moving back to March.
Which means the weather will be nicer, so that's a perk.
Yes, that helps a lot, because everybody was so panicked about it being in February and there being snowstorms, and now they're going back to the end of March, which should make things a lot easier.
Yeah, well, and despite everybody freaking out about it, they still were up about, I think, 5,000 people this year from the year before.
Would I try to enter in Crown again? Maybe. I mean, it's one of those where it doesn't hurt to enter, and then if you don't get in, you don't get in.
Yeah, I mean, if the costume's already done and you don't feel like you've done anything that would warrant you not entering in the contest, there's no reason not to apply. Like, what are they going to say? No? Well, you already had the costume and you were going to wear it anyway, so what are you really out at that point?
Well, and that's definitely what I've learned is make sure that it is 100% done before you bother submitting, because you're probably not getting in otherwise. At least not in sewing.
Well, and the contest this year was just crazy in general. I know we mentioned C80 thingamabobs earlier as far as getting second place needlework, but we know so many people that participated, and it would take us half an hour to list everybody off and all their awards. So you know who you are, and you know that you're awesome. But congrats to South Africa for taking home the crown. So Jinx Kitty Cosplay, beautiful work.
Stunning.
Yes, stunning. U.S. got second place this year, and I believe France took third. Definitely go check those out. Zephyr Cosplay and Lilu Chris are your second and third place winners. So definitely go check those out. Everybody did an amazing job, as usual. Lots and lots of talent on that stage.
Speaking of talent that deserves a shout out, special thanks to the judges that stayed to do C2E2's first cosplay masquerade, because they had a really tough job and they were willing to stay and participate in this contest, not really knowing exactly how it was going to go, because you never know how a first year is going to be. Thank you to Geeks A Go Go, Pros and Cons Cosplay, Buddy V, and Paisley and Glue for taking time out to hang out with us and judge us and share your expertise.
And special thanks to Costumers with a Cause for setting up that whole organization process and dealing with the signups and everything. Like, you guys really shined with that part of the event. So they do a lot of charity work. They do parades, hospitals, children's ward visits, any family-friendly events. They got hundreds of people that will participate, all across the Chicago area for different things. So they are cause, C-A-U-S-E, players is kind of the play on words there, but they're costumers with a cause. So definitely check them out on social media and see some of the great work that they do.
And now we get to get started on all our things for Anime Central, because it never really ends.
I know. Yeah, we're like, man, we really need to be in recovery mode from C2E2. So now as we're winding down on recovery mode from C2E2, we're like, well, I guess Ace ends in 6 weeks. Guess we better finish that now. It's a never-ending cycle, so we'll keep you updated on what's going on. You know us. We'll be working and sewing and crafting and singing and dancing and building and everything else in between now and then.
Maybe sleeping. There might be some sleep in there.
Maybe. I feel like we need to turn that into a song. I kind of got that little bit of a beat of the song from my best friend's wedding stuck in my head. Building and sewing and making.
Yes, that is exactly how that would go.
I know. It's good. Maybe we'll have that for the next episode.
Maybe.
Maybe you can go and cosplay the musical.
Everything's gonna go in Cosplay the Musical.
As it should. If you couldn't come to C2E2, we're sorry that we missed you there. We definitely would love to see you there next year. Hopefully, we'll be there next year too. That's definitely the goal. If you did happen to come to our show, when you're filling out that survey for Reed Pop to tell them how the convention went, be sure to tell them that you loved Shit Cosplayers Say and you would 100% like to see them back. Because if you give us rave reviews, there's a greater chance that they'll let us do it again. And if that's what you want and that's what we want, we should work together to make that happen. So definitely be sure to include that on your survey. If you were a participant in any of the contests that we talked about and you have constructive criticism for Reed Pop, like not starting the audio until the actors are on stage, be sure to give them that feedback as well. So, like we said before, don't just blast all over social media. Put your money where your mouth is and let the people who can actually do something about it know if you really liked something or if you didn't like something. That's the only way that the event is going to improve.
Well, thanks for joining us on our adventure to our first Comic-Con.
All right, guys, we're going to head out. Have a great rest of your week. Keep crafting. Remember that just because you can doesn't mean you should, and if it can go wrong, it will go wrong, although apparently it didn't want to this week for whatever reasons.
Woohoo!
Keep your fingers crossed that this trend continues. But we'll see you. Have a great rest of your weekend. Bye.
Bye. You've been listening to Shit Cosplayers Say, an LVC production. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Podcast SCS. Our website is lavicosplay.com. Have a fun, crazy con or cosplay-related story, absurd cosplay question, or just something in general to share with us? Email us at podcastscs@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and remember, just because you can doesn't mean you should.